Is anybody new today? All right. So what we're doing is we're just discussing non-duality, which is actually impossible, because non-duality is pointing to something that's completely unknowable and unspeakable, illogical, unbelievable. But basically what's being uncovered here is there's an experience of seeking, which is the experience of something missing. That's the motivation for seeking, is the experience that there's something missing. And that experience of something missing comes from the experience of being separate. Separate meaning that I'm here and everything else is out there. That experience is the experience of having to protect what's in here and having to find why it feels incomplete. That's the story of me. And the story of me is trying to repeat positive experiences, those which make us feel like there's nothing missing, and avoid negative experiences. And as most of you will probably have recognized, that is an exercise in complete failure, that it never works. That you can find a positive experience, but it doesn't last, and you can't avoid the negative experiences. There's just no way to do it. But that's basically the experience of me, the story of me. And what's being suggested here is that that is a misunderstanding. That's an illusion. Not just a little bit of an illusion, but a complete illusion. And that the reality behind that, or underneath that, is that everything is already exactly what's looked for. This is perfection. This is unconditional love. And what we can do is we can discuss that and talk about that. There's really nothing here to say to anyone or tell anybody about anything. There's no message. There's no solution to the problem of being a separate person. It's a hopeless situation of seeking something that can never be found. But somehow being confronted or discussing that contraction of being a separate individual, or the experience of being separate, can loosen. It seems that this, knowing is the wrong word, but I don't know how else to say it, but it seems like what's being pointed to with the term non-dual is already known, it's already recognized, it's already obvious. But the experience of being a separate individual covers it up. It's an incredibly thin layer. It's an incredibly thin veil that keeps the reality of what this really is covered. And by discussing that thin veil, that contraction can loosen up. And what's real, what's behind it, is sometimes felt, or felt is the wrong word, but sensed. And that's what we can do here. So feel free to ask questions or not, or run away, or stay. Feel free to do whatever you do.
I have a theoretical question. You have been talking about love. I heard that word being uttered. And with what you suggest, you could think that you become indifferent if there is no one. You're not there, I'm not there, so everything is indifferent.
Yeah.
How does love tie into that?
Yeah.
Because that's the opposite of being indifferent.
What this is absolutely beyond the conception of what me can do. It has nothing to do with what me thinks it'll be like. It calls it nihilistic. It expects some sort of enlightened, amazing thing because it feels incomplete. If something's wrong, it feels like something really amazing's got to happen so that it can be complete. It imagines things like Buddha and Jesus and other things up there that are completely out of reach of the normal individual, because that's what has to be happened to complete or fulfill that feeling that's what's missing. It'll think anything. It does all sorts of things. But it has no idea.
there's no path.
No, because it's already.
Could you please address the issue of frustration in the sense that it doesn't take a lot of self-reflection to realize that the me is the source of a whole lot of unnecessary suffering and drama and all that. And then when it's presented with the message that there's nothing to do, it creates an awful lot of frustration and even anger inside because you would like to have some steps to follow.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
That's all.
Well, it is horrible. The frustration is that the separate experiences itself as being in control of its life, but it can't find what it's looking for. And what's being said here is it can't find what it's looking for. So that's just frustration. It's the worst place to be, really.
About indifference, can it happen that I will just stop being, that I will become indifferent to the opinions of some people who are important for me?
Maybe. What's being suggested here isn't that the separate self will get what it wants. The separate self, when it imagines freedom, it imagines that it gets what it wants. It imagines being free to have what it wants. And what's being suggested here is its freedom from that need. It's not the freedom to get, it's the freedom from.
How do you see pain, either physical or mental pain, from that perspective?
Yeah, no one sees it. Pain is pain. Pain often has a lot of emotion attached to it because the person feels threatened by it. And that actually makes the pain worse. But pain is still pain. It's just nobody's there to hold on to it or try to push it away.
So would you say that there's some kind of resistance that's not there anymore then?
Totally.
The resistance stops.
Totally. Although resistance can arise.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't a suggestion that things get better. It's a suggestion that the need for things to get better falls away. What's being looked for is exactly what's happening. This is what's being looked for. And this is whatever happens. So it's not better or worse, it's just simply what's happening. And this is missed because of the sense of separation can't recognize this, because it's always trying to make this fit the sense of separation, the sense of something missing. But it's this, it's exactly what's being felt, it's exactly what's happening. That's what's being looked for. But for the separate, it feels like what's happening has some sort of content, it has some sort of reality behind it. And that keeps it from being recognized as empty, which is then seen as pure, as perfect.
When there is this seeing and hearing and everything happening now, and then look like inside, that who is seeing and receiving all of this, and there is not found like anything solid or even anything at all.
Right.
So what is, or is it the character who is seeing, perceiving, or
Actually, it's the brain.
brain is doing
Yeah.
the work? Like getting the knowledge.
You're talking about functions.
Okay.
And functions are simply a product of the brain. But the function, the brain, the body, are all simply arisings, are simply appearances. It's empty.
You cannot find anything.
Yeah, but when you say, but when you say you can't find anything, you're talking about somebody looking.
I don't know. It's like sometimes it's somebody looking, and then what is looking, and it's like a circle where it's never ever anything.
Right. And what's being suggested here is the end of the circle. When there's
Okay.
no more, when there's no more looking, when there's no more hearing, when there's no more seeing, there's just what is. There's just what's happening. There's no more here, there's no more there.
Mm.
But is there something else than the brain?
Something else other than the brain? Chairs? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's a mind.
There's nothing behind it. The arising of the brain, the arising of chairs, isn't something that's happening. It's just what is. So there's nothing behind it doing it. It's already complete. It's not going somewhere. It's not developing.
So, in the apparent history of Homo sapiens,
Mm-hmm.
the brain has changed over time.
Yeah.
That's just fiction?
No.
No, it's
No.
not.
No. The past isn't fiction. It just seems to be. There's nothing real about it.
Because I read something the other day about the cognitive revolution in Homo sapiens.
Mm.
And before that, it seems like you couldn't do the dual thing.
Right.
We were just, or is, animals as all animals.
Right.
So it might be a part of the apparent evolution that the me suddenly appeared.
It is.
Yeah.
The brain could do it. It actually happened because we started to cook food. So that so that the brain was no longer needed to chew so much.
Yeah.
So that
I
the
heard
brain
about the intestine.
so the brain
Yeah.
could get bigger.
Yeah.
And it was with the bigger brain that it was able then to come up with the concept or idea or the experience of separation, inside and outside. It seems to be a function of survival.
Exactly.
So it's a function of trying to survive sort of emotionally, so inside, outside, an individual with their own ideas of what this is about, trying to survive.
So less energy to the intestines because they became less
Mm.
when we could cook and
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
That's amazing.
It is, isn't it?
So,
But that's all a story,
yeah. I
which means
understand.
it's not
story.
real.
No.
It is and it isn't. It's just a story. It doesn't prove that it happened. Just because we can talk about it. Isn't that amazing? Just because we can talk about it doesn't mean it happened. Seems to.
And it also seems like the me apparently is the source of extinction of Homo sapiens in a way. That's of course also a
I don't know what you
story.
mean by extension.
Yeah, you know, we are getting more and more and killing more and more because of ideas constructed by the me.
Hmm.
Extinction.
I don't know that that the me, you know, ants fight battles with other colonies
Yeah.
and will destroy the whole colony. There's no me in that. So the idea that without me we'd suddenly be living in paradise, I think is a bit of a wishful thinking of what me would be.
I was thinking of more the natural animal state.
Hmm.
So when you say it's not real, what do you call real? What we can touch?
Nothing is real. Nothing is real.
So do you mean that real and unreal are just words which we have invented?
Well, it's an effort to say it's real and unreal. It's an effort to describe what this is, which really is indescribable. Real and unreal isn't what that is. But what a real and unreal points to is that there's no platform, no stage, no solidity, no point where anything begins or ends. Everything is completely in freedom. Everything is completely free. So there's nothing to know. Knowing appears within nothing to know, or unknowing. This is unknowing appearing to be a chair.
But I'm quite sure it is a chair. I can see it, I can touch it, I kind of label it as chair.
You can what?
Label it as chair in our language.
Label it as a chair, yeah?
Yeah. So it's knowing. I know this is a chair.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what is this unknowing?
That's exactly what just said that. Unknowing just said, that's a chair, and I know it's a chair. And that which says, I know it's a chair, I can label it a chair, thinks it knows what's going to happen in the next second. That's how I can label it, and it doesn't. But it lives in that dream world of knowing, of being able to control and know what this is. So what's hidden is the reality, is that that appears to be a chair, but it could be anything.
So do you mean like for me, I would say this is a chair, but someone else or a cat, for example,
No, that's not what I
say
mean.
that
No, that's not what I mean. I mean that
something
there's no actual consistency to anything. Consistency is apparent. Continuity is just an appearance.
So it's not the same thing that we have just invented names for.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that the invented name that you think comes from the past is this appearing as an invented name that comes from the past. Is nothing that appears as an invented name that comes from the past.
Where do I have to look for or to pay my attention to see what is real?
Right. I can't see what's real. There's no one that can see what's real. No one knows what's real.
cannot see what's real, but I can touch what's real. I think if I bump into this chair, I will definitely feel it's real. Maybe
You'll-
without language.
What will happen is you'll experience the solidity of the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I'm talking about is that experience is unreal, is real and unreal. It's an appearance. It doesn't mean anything. See, what you're saying is through doing that, you're real. You have a reality, and therefore you know what all of this is. That's the misunderstanding. Touching a chair is touching a chair. That's just something that appears to happen. It doesn't mean anything.
So it's more the position, the here, than the me.
Well, me is here. Here is me.
Exactly the same.
It's the same thing. It starts with I, and then you get am.
Mm.
Yeah.
If I could get rid of the illusion of me and the duality, would that mean that I, or whatever it would then be, would start seeing other people not as other people? So, I don't know how to explain it, but if I wouldn't be thinking myself as I or something dual, then I would see also you as something non-dual, even though you might be thinking that you are an individual I.
So, just to be clear, the I doesn't get rid of the I. there's no I that can do that. And what's recognized when the contraction, when the sense of separation falls away, is that you've never seen another person. You've never seen anyone the way they really are. You've always ever seen people within the context of the story that you had about them, the relationship. And that when that I falls away, that relationship dies as well. And so you see the other as they are.
So then it wouldn't matter if the other person would still be thinking dualistically.
Absolutely, it doesn't matter at all. There isn't anybody thinking or being dualistic. There's just what apparently happens. And it's not just other people that's never been seen. The chair's never been seen for what it is. The lamps have never been seen for what they are.
Do you mean that we always had some emotional importance to something?
I wouldn't say emotional, but there's always something added to what is. Separation is unnatural. It's uncomfortable. It's discontentment. And so that is always then in the relationship with everything else.
When you talk about energy, like what is the what is the I can't find the words. Yeah.
What is it when there's like a strong urge to ask a question, but no question comes? They kind of get answered before they come, but still the urge is there. You know? And it's some kind of attachment to emotional body somehow. Something.
There's no reason for anything. It's helpful, isn't it?
I was asking yesterday about reading.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you read a book, there is reason. Like in tradition, you get knowledge or everything. That word come before that in space and time. If it's a crim, maybe you look in the end, etc.
Yeah.
But you still read. So how is it?
In the same way that this is still a chair, it just doesn't have any context. It doesn't need any context. Context can appear, but it doesn't need any context anymore. The me lives in a story, or is a story, where this needs to be a chair. It needs to be. In a way, its entire existence depends upon this being a chair, because it knows it's a chair. So it knew it was a chair, it knows it's a chair, and it knows in the future it's going to be a chair. That's how it builds up its entire life. What's being suggested here is that this can still be whatever it is, but it doesn't need to be. So words can still make sense. There can still be stories, but they don't mean anything. They're just what's happening.
So like neurosis and things, or emotions fade out.
Emotions
So
seem to do two things. One is they fade in some ways, and in other ways they seem to get stronger. So things can be quite intense, and then they go away. What was the question?
Is the reading less?
Reading,
Is
that's a
also
character
fading
thing.
out?
That's a character thing. What the character does is just character thing. It doesn't mean anything. But neurosis, it's a funny story about neurosis, because this happened to be incredibly neurotic before the me fell away. And the brain obviously creates structures around neurotic knots. And when nobody's feeding, when there's nobody left, and nobody thinks of the neurosis, this whatever the neurosis knot is made around, means anything, the energy sort of falls out. And at some point when the energy sort of, exactly like you said, does that, they break away. And then something really funny happens. The brain has to reorient itself. Because it had this thing around which it built so many other things, and suddenly it falls away, and it has to sort of figure out how to function again, in a new way, because that sort of cornerstone or part of its functioning system has broken off.
Is it like learning a new habit?
No, because nobody, that's the thing, the whole thing that I'm talking about, nobody does it. Nobody does the falling away of emotion. Nobody does the neurotic, starvation. Nobody does the breaking away. Nobody does the reorientation. It all happens without anybody doing anything, just like everything else, just like that question.
Some can notice that
Yeah.
there is a different functioning.
Yeah. Well, the change is noticeable, but there's no one here that knows that there's no one here. So there's no one here that knows that these neurotic things have fallen away. But when they fell away, there was a recognition that that was happening. Recognition only happens when there's a change. Otherwise, everything is just what it is.
But when I came to Finland, I changed a lot because I always had new things happening with me, and my brain, maybe my brain reoriented himself. I became not totally a new person, but I changed it a lot because it was new environment and new challenges.
Yeah.
So with the emotions, is it more similar than like little babies or animals that they just totally somehow feel it and then it goes away?
But there's just a lack of self-consciousness about the whole thing. There's a lack of needing it to be there or not be there.
Mm-hmm. Or adding something to it.
Exactly.
I'm still curious about this emotion, where it comes from. Because there is no conditioning involved with it.
Oh, of course there is.
There is still conditioning.
Yeah, the brain's conditioned, if there is a
Okay.
brain.
Okay.
Emotions are a story. The story remains
story is still there.
in some sense. It just is completely empty.
It's like meaningless.
It is meaningless.
Yeah. But the emotion, the story is still feeding the emotions.
Well, the emotion is a story. Just
Yeah.
an emotion is a story. It's something that happens.
Yeah. And then that's just it.
That's just it. Exactly. The what's recognized though when that is it always was that way. That's the way it is now.
Would it be correct to assume that feelings such as fear and boredom tend to lessen as they seem to be emotions that are particularly bored around the sense of the separate self and its lack?
Some fear, who knows? Here, some fear has fallen away, definitely. And boredom is an interesting thing because boredom seems to me a collection, something that collects and becomes solid, boredom, and there's no ability for that collection to happen, so boredom never happens. There's sort of the movement to be bored, but then it never solidifies. But that's all just a story.
I wonder how that would look like on a brain scan.
Yeah. I wonder if you'd even notice. I don't know.
It would be really interesting to see. I suppose the brain would return more quickly to homeostasis or stable state or whatever you want to call it.
Because in a way it has nothing to do with the brain, I don't know what it would look like. What we're talking about is really something else. What we're talking about is not the effect, a story about the brain and the environment. What we're pointing to is the fact that the brain and the environment is the same thing, all arising at the same time, but not really arising, just being what it is. So any effect that it would have would be just a story. It would be meaningless. You know, we're talking about an aliveness that's not understanding. An aliveness that is everything.
What sense is that aliveness?
What sense? It's not a sense.
No, what sense is that aliveness?
I don't understand.
What sense is that aliveness?
Nothing. There's no distance to it. There's no knowing of it. There's no experience. It's not an experience. It's just this without any center.
So nothing's connecting the dots.
Nothing connects any dots. No dots.
What do you mean by nothing? There's always an input of information into your brain. There are always senses and so on. There's always input.
Yeah.
So what is nothing?
What is nothing?
Yeah.
That. Appearing as input, appearing as senses. Nothing isn't somewhere else that needs to be reached. That's the difficulty with this. It can't be understood. The point is this, which you know is a chair, is nothing chairing.
So I'm sallying.
No, nothing is Sally.
I think she might be sad. So straight away when I look at that, my brain tells me lamp.
Right.
When I look at that, my brain tells me straight away chair,
Yeah.
floor, wall, window.
Yeah.
So would my brain tell me something else if I wouldn't be thinking with I and me versus the chair?
Well, the thing is you aren't thinking with I and me. The brain recognizes things, like it sees faces in musta, in patterns.
Mm-hmm.
It just does that. What would stop is the thinking I'm doing that.
I was just thinking about the possibility of being more creative if you drop.
Well, what happens? What's recognized that this you couldn't get more creative than this. That's the amazing thing about it. That's the awesomeness of what is it's the most creative thing could ever be. See, the me knows that this is a chair, and an uncomfortable one at that. It knows all about it. So it completely misses the awesomeness of this. I mean, what is that? What is that?
So for you, are there still thoughts, including this me?
Right. There's nobody here.
But there can still be a rising of the thought,
Anything can
I
arise.
need to do something.
Anything can arise.
Yes.
And I don't do anything. That doesn't do anything. No one there does anything. It's just what happens. No one ever does anything.
So this thought also just comes from the brain.
No, it comes from nothing. Just like the brain does. Comes from nothing isn't quite right because it is nothing braining. It is nothing thinking.
So me having the me here, could I even recognize someone who doesn't have anyone home there?
There's nothing to recognize. I mean, there's no. I don't glow. At home I glow a lot. My wife complains, but here I turn it way down so you don't notice. But if some no me was walking around, they might have forgotten to turn it down. You could see them glowing. No, there's nothing. Sometimes I smell of roses. No, there's nothing to notice. There's nothing special. There's just nothing special about that. The only thing that's really special is me. Me is incredibly special. It thinks what it thinks is special. What it feels is special. Its story is special. And when there's no me, it's ordinary.
So with this me, I have also is a tendency to make other people special.
Well, or not.
Or unspecial.
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
But it all centers around me being special. It all centers around me being special. Yeah. Which comes from the feeling of there's something being wrong. Basically, that's what me feels. There's something wrong. There's either something wrong with me or there's something wrong with everything. Somewhere that's something wrong, something's not right, something needs to be put right. That's the story of me.
It's almost that
as if there's the core feeling of something being wrong, and then you try to find things that fit that, like, oh, that's the cause of it, or it's the work, or it's this person here, or it's the weather or something.
And there's always the feeling that if I get this thing fixed, then I will be happy. But then when you get that thing fixed, then you find, well, there was still this one thing that I need to fix, then I will be happy.
Or I need to lose me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just get the list of how to lose me.
Yeah.
3 steps.
And what that separation can't recognize, that separation is also the creativity of perfection, the creativity of nothing, is that it can appear as separate. In the appearance of no separation, nothing happening, it can appear as something separate happening.
And always you are told that nobody is perfect, but in the end we are already all perfect.
Well, you're not, but... How would you know this?
Yes, that's exactly what I meant. Everybody else. Oh, burn. Cookies for you, man.
Cookies still might happen.
Perfection is a funny word, because I think there can be sort of the expectation or the feeling that perfection means something in particular. And what it means is that nothing is particular, that everything exactly as it arises is perfection, no matter what the judgment about it is. And that judgment is also perfection. And that feeling about that is perfection. There's nothing behind that. It's complete. The perfection is complete. It's not inclusive or exclusive. It's completely everything.
Yeah, because probably everybody has this kind of image of perfect self.
Right.
They're trying to achieve, which includes everything like relationships and body and education and work and family.
And what's being suggested here is there's nothing that's not perfect. Ever. And that's the conundrum for me, is that it lives in a world where perfection needs to be brought about and can never recognize that there's nothing that's not already that.
But isn't it called unconditional love?
It is.
So is there any responsibility?
No. Because there's no one to make a choice. It's good, isn't it?
yesterday you said that there's still caring. So what's the difference between giving a meaning and caring?
Did I say that?
Yes.
Or did I say anything could arise?
Now you said that this me falling doesn't mean that there's no caring.
Right. Okay. I can see. I can say that. Yeah.
But is there? I don't see the difference between giving a meaning and caring. Is there a difference?
Caring is just something that seems to arise. It depends on what we're talking about with caring. Like caring arose about what I was, putting this shirt on so that it fit with these pants. And is that what you mean?
Like, I mean, you can give a meaning to people in your life, and somebody might then think that, okay, I care for this person, right? But isn't that related? Like, you give a meaning or you care?
If you're talking about relationship, then that tends to fall away. But there's a resonance or a feeling of, empathy with certain people. A sense of, definitely.
Like you can have a partner in life.
Yeah, definitely.
And you still have some kind of bond there, or how do you call it? Like
bond. I don't know. Bond seems a little bit funky, but. But there's definitely, caring arises,
in a moment.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is, yeah.
Okay.
So what does it mean to see other people as they are? Because you always interpret their actions. And it's just like if you see them as they are, it's just a video. They went somewhere, they did something.
Well, bodies seem to have sort of an energy about them, sort of an expression about them. The way they walk, the way they talk, the way they are, what their interests are. And most of the time when there's a me, that is not seen for what it is. There's always some sort of relationship about it. There's always, the me is living in a situation of need, of incompleteness. So it needs other people.
Yeah,
so
it makes judgments.
Excuse me?
No.
Go for
It makes judgments.
It makes judgment that relate to it finding what it thinks is missing, which totally distort seeing somebody else as they are.
So when I see someone else as they are, I just don't make any judgment. So he just went to a shop and bought a food and no any judgment.
It's going to be impossible to know what's being said here because what's being expressed is unknowing. It's an unknowing that where people arise, where what happens is just arising. There's nobody here that then is making judgments or perception about what's happening over there. It's just what's arising. It's just like I can't describe what this is.
But I can make a photo.
Yeah, but that's not what it is. Or let's say that's not what it is and isn't. That's only what it is.
Are you comfortable? sitting there.
Am I comfortable?
Looking bad.
Oh, right.
And just moving.
So arising seems to suggest change.
Yeah,
Is it change in time?
yeah. Time is change.
So not this linear time.
No, absolutely. Apparently. It looks like it. We can talk about it. We can talk about the fact that you just asked the question. When the position drops, that's seen as just this appearing as that. There's no center to it. When there's a position, it experiences that as coming from somewhere and going somewhere.
If it's seen, but there's nobody seeing.
When there's no one there, there's nobody seeing you. Seeing happens. It's still a function, though. It's still a story. Seeing is a story.
You said that after the recognition, a lot of neurosis fell away.
Yeah. But I happen to have been very neurotic.
Right, but it's a twofold question, more out of curiosity. Do you think it has to happen in that sequence?
No, it is definitely it's not it's absolutely not sequential.
Okay, right.
But it really isn't sequential.
Okay.
And the most difficult part of the whole thing to understand, because doesn't actually make sense, is what's recognized is nothing's happening. So the recognition doesn't happen either. The apparent happening stops, but that's not a progression.
So it's outside the whole paradigm.
It's completely outside of everything. And in that, it's completely inclusive. And even more amazing, this is that. Exactly as it is. This is that. This is that absolute inclusiveness. That's not happening.
see how one could have difficulties communicating that.
Yeah. I never know what to say. It's funny because what's completely obvious here is I don't hold these meetings. I don't answer any questions. It's just nothing responding to the energy that arises. I take no responsibility.
When the recognition happened, were you looking for it?
Everybody's looking for it.
Did you know?
If you call it, it's completely unexpected. It's an absolute surprise. It's the one place you can never look. Right behind you. Looking for enlightenment is like trying to look through a mirror. All you ever see is yourself. And then suddenly the mirror is empty. No mirror.
How do you do this then?
She does it.
So you need a servant.
Well, when the me falls, serpents arise. It's amazing.
Like the cookies.
I don't think I'm getting any cookies.
So if the me is still there, and there's experience of nothing responding, that's just illusion.
I'm not even understanding. I'm not trying to understand the question.
So, I'm convinced that the me is still here.
Right? Me
But-
always is.
Yeah, and yet I have sometimes experience that the nothing is responding.
Yeah. Well, that's true. That's all there is. The nothing responds, and me comes in and goes, "I did that."
Okay. And sometimes.
And sometimes the me might forget, and then there's just nothing responding. It's a really inconsistent state, me.
So it is possible that sometimes the me is in sleep.
This is so much closer than you think. This is so much more this than you think. This is so much. It's already this. It's already what you're looking for. There's just something that shows up within this and says, "This isn't it."
Yeah.
But that's still this. Even this isn't it. Is this?
So what? So what about conscious and subconscious?
Yeah.
So we have some conscious which makes the plans, and then there is subconscious which have their own agenda.
Those are appearances. Those are things that seem to happen. This what's being shared doesn't answer any questions. It doesn't answer anything. It doesn't give any information. It doesn't help in any way. What it is a solution. It's the end of questions. Actually, it's the end of the question.
So it's kind of totally different thing.
Absolutely.
You knew you had glimpses, right?
I never did have glimpses.
You didn't, okay.
It just left. And it was a total surprise. Completely unexpected. The biggest non-happening ever.
So how did it happen?
Well, it didn't. A non-happening isn't happening.
What were the circumstances?
Yeah, what you want to know is how you can make it happen. I was hanging underneath a helicopter with one finger. I happen to sell helicopter rides.
Point taken.
It was okay, good.
But it was obvious this.
It's obvious. It's so obvious. It's exactly what's being said. It's exactly that. The contraction falls away. Recognize that it never happened. That's exactly what's recognized. It's exactly like that. It never happened. So there's nowhere for it to come back to because it never was.
So you can't just recognize it and then unrecognize it again.
There seems to be glimpses, which she mentioned, that didn't really happen here.
Is it though possible that there's someone here that just for some miracle, just somehow lives without being, stuck in this me.
Yeah, why not?
And they don't even know anything about what you're talking
Why
about.
not?
Yeah.
There's no prerequisite
Yeah.
to a me falling away.
Yeah.
It's a little surprising that the me actually is as continuous, consistent as it is.
Yeah.
This isn't a big deal. It's a big deal for me, and when it dies, it's recognized that it's really not a big deal at all. This doesn't know anything about what we're talking about here. There's no one here that goes and lives in a certain state that has to do with being free or with knowing that there's no one here.
What if the me can be totally satisfied and seeing that everything is perfect? Is that possible?
No.
Okay.
Well, it is just discontent in itself. It's unnatural. It's an actual tension in the body.
And you might not even notice it before it leaves.
I didn't notice it. I had no idea. I had felt tense, and I could do meditation and relax, and that felt good. This tension was somewhere else. It was a completely different sort of tension. that when it fell away, it was like I never even knew it was there. Because there was
Still-
nothing. Excuse me?
But you still have stress and
I don't have anything.
so and that shape that I'm seeing experience stress.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Stress. Anything can arise.
Yeah.
This isn't about having a better life.
That's so funny because there is so many so-called non-dual teachers
Yeah.
and wise words and everything, but still they offer so much things to you.
Yeah.
Do that, then do that.
Mm.
You must be aware.
Mm.
Be awareness, and
Mm.
that's also the only for me story.
It actually fits the me perfectly. The idea that it can do something to find what it feels like it's missing, because it feels like it can. It totally fits to the experience of me that there's something wrong, there's something missing, and the need to do something to make that better. It seems to me there's also somewhere that it knows it'll never work, so it's safe. Because there can always be try harder. If you didn't find it, it's because you didn't try hard enough. It's quite a jail, gefängnis. It's a hard one to get out of. If I didn't, the only reason it hasn't happened is because I haven't tried hard enough.
talking about reading before. On the aspect
Reading.
of reading there. And you were saying something like me tries to develop itself by reading or by doing something, always trying to like be something more and develop and things like that. But isn't that also a good thing? So if you would drop me, then why would you want to study and learn more and be more?
Well, there's no such thing as good or bad. Good or bad exists only in the story of me.
So learning Finnish might happen.
It might. Not here.
You'd be not sure.
Hey!
That's also Swedish, so
That's true.
Do you know of any person where the me dropped that suddenly started to do totally different things? Like, you could say learning new things, or just doing totally different things.
I've heard different stories about things changing when the me drops. It's different for different people, it seems. Sometimes it's more dramatic, sometimes there's no change at all in some ways.
Does it mean that if you dropped me, you can become anyone you want? Because there's anyway no restrictions what you are, so you can become anyone you want. You can go to any profession, go to any country.
Well, actually it's exactly the opposite. So when the me drops, which doesn't happen, by the way, this isn't a suggestion that something special is going to happen and then everything you wanted is going to be there. I'm saying that that whole idea falls away. And then there's just what happens, which is this. But this.
So when there's nothing happening,
Yeah,
and then the me comes up and says something happened,
yeah.
what is it then that sees that the me came?
Well, me experiences itself as arising.
So again, it's a me.
The me is the only thing that experiences.
Okay, it's conflicting because at that very moment, it feels like nothing saw it because then it goes away.
Oh, totally.
So it's just a trap.
It's just a trap. It's a total trap. It's like a card trick.
It's interesting because
It's fascinating.
It
It really looks like something happened.
It feels like there's nothing again,
Yeah.
but there still is something then.
Well, that's it. But that is what this is. Nothing and something. Same thing. This is nothing and something. Everything empty. No thing thinging.
So the whole nothing is a trick.
Nothing as a state, nothing as no thing is a trick. This is no thing. The trick is there's something else.
Yeah.
So what happens with all those people when the need drops?
Nothing. There's absolutely no suggestion that things get better without me.
So they just live their lives, but they feel differently inside themselves.
There is no day.
Okay. Those with whom it happened.
Excuse me?
Those with whom it happened, maybe 5-10 people.
I didn't hear that.
Maybe 5-10 people with whom this.
There are no other 5 or 10 people. This is it. There's nowhere else.
In the story of me, then something was recognized and then the hell was out.
Yeah.
It would look like everything was like family destroyed, like it's affecting everything.
Yeah.
Didn't leave anything to touch.
Yeah.
And it was like in the storm somehow.
Mm.
And might be many times again.
Mm.
It looks like the me is controlling so hard that only in the moment when you are really like dying, there is nothing other possibilities.
Exactly.
It will like, okay, surrender. I cannot do anything with this.
Well, it dies.
Yeah.
And so it either dies when at death, when it
Yeah,
recognizes there's nowhere to go. There's no hope,
Yeah,
there's no time to
no,
live in anymore.
totally lost.
Or it dies now.
Yeah.
Why not? Or in 10 minutes. Why not?
Nothing to choose.
No.
What is a hell? One moment experience and nothing survived with it. It's like
Well, nothing was born, so there's nothing
Yeah.
to survive. There's nothing happening, so nothing dies.
amazing thing. It looks like it's so big.
It does.
It's like super.
It's a trick.
And
Mm.
yeah, and in the one way nothing happened.
Yeah. It can be quite traumatic for some people when me dies. It struggles. Some people can experience quite an intense struggle as the me dies. But nobody chooses it. Nobody does that.
And voluntarily choose it, never ever.
Yeah. Mm.
And there is nothing like knowledge about what is happening that me is dying or whatever,
No.
it's not relevant at all.
No.
It's like
Nothing helps.
no.
No. What time is it?
10 to 4.
So is this dropping me like dropping social me? What I was taught, what's culture?
It's completely unimaginable.
Completely what?
Unimaginable.
That people just stop judging others based on their culture. So they're just like what they are.
Sounds like therapy. this isn't about therapy. tea and coffee,
Yes.
pizza and cookies, and fudge.
Watch.
And fudge, yeah. None for me, I heard.